it can be really difficult and can feel incredibly overwhelming when we have experiences that feel that they're pulling us in a direction that we don't want to go. One of the metaphors that can help us with this experience is understanding the way of water. The way that waves, if we fight against them, if we struggle against the water, we're going to make it worse. Whereas if we can learn to soften, relax, and trust, we can find that it can carry us. That in fact, that very water, that very experience that we feel threatened by and almost overpowered by, can be the very thing that can carry us safely to shore. Hi, I'm Kate, and we're going to explore some ways to deal with cravings or urges, whatever you call them, through the lens of yoga, but also just some practical tools. Because if you are currently trying to cut back or cut out your drinking, chances are that at some point you're going to get a craving, a desire, you're going to want to drink. Occasionally there's some really lucky people who don't face this and they just stop and that's the end of it. But for most of us, there are these episodes of wanting, which are a challenge. I know when I gave up drinking a long time ago, often my attempts were unsuccessful because I didn't know how to deal with cravings and urges, and I would end up going back to drinking. So hopefully this video might give you some tools and a real experience at the end when we do a meditation, so that you feel a little more empowered and have yet another tool to use if you face cravings and urges. Because sometimes they can seem to come out of nowhere, whereas yoga and experience has taught me that they actually don't come out of nowhere. They are a thought followed by a feeling, and if we're not careful, they're followed by an action. Yet we have so many thoughts. They say we have up to 50,000 thoughts a day. I'm not sure about that, I've never counted, but our mind is full of thoughts. So sometimes we don't notice them. We're not aware of what our thoughts are, and all we notice is the feeling. And sometimes urges can feel enormous. They can come on like a tidal wave, or sometimes they can just start as a little niggle, but they can, if we feed them, they can build. And if we're new at dealing with urges and cravings, sometimes it can feel like the only option to end the craving or the urge is to take a drink. And if you're watching this, you're probably not wanting to take a drink. You're wanting to be able to deal with an urge and a craving and stay on track, which is drinking less or not drinking at all. So it helps to know that urges or cravings, they don't actually last forever, even though sometimes they feel like they're going to. They have a lifespan, and they do come to a natural end. Yet they can get bigger if we feed them. And it helps to know, well, what feeds an urge? What's actually going to make it grow, so you can avoid doing that. So the things that make it grow are things that mainly happening in the mind. It's if we start that old should I, shan't I, that tennis match of our thoughts going, yes, I will, no, I won't, that you may be familiar with. The longer we spend debating in our mind whether we're going to give in to this urge or craving, the more momentum that craving or that urge is going to get. So if we can avoid that, the urge or the craving is going to pass far more quickly. And sometimes you can spend a lot of time and energy in that tennis match. I remember sometimes spending days just really having that internal battle with myself. Will I, won't I? Weighing up the pros and cons. So if you find yourself doing that, realize that what you're doing is making it harder for yourself, and that the longer you stay in that arena, the stronger the urge or the craving is going to get. Other things that can obviously feed an urge is if we start fantasizing, if we start glamorizing or romanticizing what it will be like if we drink. These things are all going to make an urge get bigger and stronger. So one of the ways to deal with these urges and cravings is to use this acronym. It's like these 5, the word DEADS, and we take the first letter from each one, and each of them offer a way to deal with the urge or the craving. And we're all different, and it depends on what stage of dealing with our drinking that we are, which ones will be appropriate, and you can get to use all of them. I'm going to offer them out to you in hope that one of them might sound like something useful for you, or you might want to try all of them and see which ones stick with you the most. So the first D in this DEADS, so if you've got a pen handy, you could write that down, but I'm also thinking you can probably remember that, just a 5-letter word, DEADS. So the first thing that we can use, which is helpful, is delay. So there's a part of us that wants to drink when we're having an urge or craving. It started with some thought, which we may not have noticed, but we find ourselves really fancying a drink. Sometimes the tactic of just delaying can be enough for that urge to peter out and we don't end up drinking after all. It's almost like having a conversation with yourself. So just saying, okay, you can have one, but just not now. Or, okay, you can have a drink, but let's wait until tomorrow. Or, sure, you can have a drink, but let's at least wait till after dinner. And more often than not, if you've delayed it long enough, probably wouldn't work if you delayed it for 5 minutes, but if you delay it for an hour or 2 or a day, that urge is long gone. And so you're in the safe zone of you've not given into that urge. So you've learned something and you've strengthened that muscle of learning not to give in to urges and cravings. So that's the D. The E stands for escape. So where this is really useful is if you need to escape the trigger. We all know there's particular people, places, or things that can really make us feel like drinking. Most of us have times and places where we don't feel like drinking at all, and never have and never will. But there can be particular people, all we need to do is see them, or there can be places or times like after work or walking past the bottle store that really set us off. So if you find yourself in a situation that you know you've been triggered and that's what's making the craving happen, if you can, just exit. Just go somewhere else, do something else, just get out of that triggering situation. And hopefully the urge will subside when you're away from that trigger point. The A from DEADS is just acknowledge. Sometimes if we try and suppress something and pretend it's not happening, it's not usually a very helpful strategy. These things are happening within us. So sometimes just to acknowledge and accept, say, okay, I am having a craving right now. Acknowledge it. If you're someone who's comfortable having a conversation with yourself, you can just say, okay, I know you feel like drinking, I hear it. Sometimes that can also just diminish the craving as well. Whereas if you try and pretend it's not happening, there can be a kind of a kickback, and the urge or the craving can actually just kind of go underground and build. So there's another D in this, and this stands for distract. So really simple, we use it with toddlers. It's like, just get yourself to do something else. Anything, something actually that you're doing. You can have a shower, you can write a crossword, you can go for a run, you can turn the TV on. A lot of us probably at some point in this journey with alcohol, sometimes we even eat. Not necessarily a good long-term strategy, but maybe it works in the short term. So just distract yourself. And again, this sometimes is really successful. And the S stands for substitute. So I'm not really mean substituting one addiction for another. I'm talking about substituting some of the addictive thoughts that you have. So most of us, by the time we've run into trouble with drinking, have got some patterns of thinking that are really attached to our drinking, like I deserve a drink, it's the end of the day, or this is the way I unwind. So if you can discover what some of your thinking patterns are and just start to substitute them with a more healthy, positive thought pattern, that can also just really stop a craving in its tracks, and you can move on to something else and the craving will pass. So there are some things you can do. Also, what you can do is begin to learn how to, what we call, ride or surf an urge. So from yoga, we understand that there's a connection between how you think and how you feel and how you breathe. And this urge surfing is learning to just sit with an urge and be curious and interested in it. You're not trying to get rid of it. You're actually just trying to understand it and feel it. And the more you do it, you can learn that all urges, they kind of build slowly. Some build fast, but there's a process. They build, they get to a peak where it's at its height, and then they actually just fall away. And it's very similar to a wave. Like if you think in the ocean, those waves, they just start from nothing and they build and they build and they build until the wave's at its full height, and it can be quite big at that point. And then they just fall away. They dissolve back into the ocean. And it's the same thing with an urge or a craving. And so there's a process that we can go through that teaches us how to learn just to be with these cravings and surf them. And if you're someone who has perhaps experienced pain in your life, physical pain, you may have already learned how to do this. And we're not running away from it. We're just learning to be present. And we can all do it. You don't need to have any superpower. So the first thing that we just need to do is to be willing and to understand that there might be moments of it that feel a little bit uncomfortable. And if that's the case, if it gets too uncomfortable, you just drop it. You stop doing the practice. So you're fully in control, you're fully in charge of your own process. So how we learn to do it is just through two main principles. The first one is that we start to learn this idea of breath awareness. And I will talk you through that soon. We'll actually go into a practice and we'll do breath awareness. And then we're also learning to be aware of our own body sensations, because cravings and urges are happening in the body. There's experiences and sensations going on in the body that you may not even be aware of, but over time you can learn to feel what happens for me when I have an urge. And it's going to be different. We all have a different body, we all have a different way of processing and making sense of it. But if you can find a way to understand and just be present with your own body and your own sensations, you will find either quickly or over time that you can learn just to sit with a craving, and it's like you're almost watching a film. You're watching something as it arises, as it builds, and as it fades away. So what I'd like you to do next is we're actually going to do a practice of this kind of urge surfing. And all you need to do is make yourself really comfortable. That can be lying down, or it could be sitting up, whatever's most comfortable. It's probably better if you can anticipate 10 minutes of being not interrupted. So turn your phone off, maybe close the door if you're sharing a home with others. And most importantly, understand that at any point, if you're not feeling okay about anything I suggest, you're in charge. If it doesn't feel right for you, please don't do it. And if I suggest something and you think, oh, it might be better for me if I slightly tweaked it or changed it, go ahead and make the changes you need so that this makes sense to you and has meaning for you, and that you feel safe and confident. My hope for you is that we do it once together and you kind of feel confident in doing it, and that you go on and practice a few times when you're not having an urge or a craving, so that in the future when you do have one, you're like, I'm going to practice that thing. I'm going to practice urge surfing. So what I would say to you now, if you're someone who feels really comfortable with your eyes closed, closing your eyes can be a great way to go inward, because most of this is an inner experience. If you don't like closing your eyes, maybe have a go at just what we call softening the gaze, which means that you just let your eyes drop sort of more to ground level, and you kind of soften the focus so that you're not kind of bearing outwardly hard through your eyes. And then just check that you're comfortable. Sometimes we think there's particular ways we're meant to sit, or particularly if we're calling it yoga or meditation, you can sit how you like. The key thing is that you're comfortable. So just shuffle around. If you're lying down, just let your body get heavy as is available to you in this moment. And if you're sitting, sometimes just shimmy around a little bit. See, can you feel your sitting bones in the chair or the floor? And then most of us are carrying tension of some sort, particularly if this is the first time for you doing this. Nearly all of us feel slightly anxious when we're doing something for the first time. We really want to do it right. So I would offer you the opportunity to let go any surface tension. And the easiest way I know to do that is just to sigh. Most of us do that naturally anyway. We just breathe out. So I'm going to leave a little space now for you to sigh, or you might even want to make a few noises as many times as you need to, until you feel you could just sort of begin to breathe slightly more quietly in and out through the nose. So we'll begin this meditation now. So if in real time you were experiencing an urge or a craving, it might have been quite hard for you even to settle. Sighing 2, 3, 4, 5 times may not be enough for you to reach a pace of feeling completely calm. And that's okay. When we have an urge or a craving, there's often a kind of heightened sense of energy in the system somewhere. So just be okay with that. What I invite you to start this meditation with is an attitude of friendliness towards yourself, that you're going to be radically friendly to whatever's happening for you in this moment. That instead of judging or criticizing or rejecting parts of yourself, just for now, just for the next 10 minutes, you're going to make everything welcome. All thoughts, all feelings, it's all welcome. So now I invite you just to do a scan of your body. Sometimes the easiest way to do this is to imagine it's somebody else's body and that you're looking at it with love and compassion, and you just want to see how this body is. Just notice, start from the head and just notice anything that stands out. Unfortunately, often we notice pain or discomfort more than we notice ease. So let the first wave of the scan be about finding all the bits that don't feel okay. Move down from your head into your neck and your throat. Feel what's happening in your shoulders and your arms. Just notice if you're criticizing yourself or judging yourself already. If you are, see if you can be kind. Then just notice anything that's going on in your chest and your belly. Scan down your back and your spine, into the buttocks and the hips and the pelvis, and scan through your legs and your feet. And at any point, if you feel the urge to sigh or make a sound, go ahead and help yourself to that. And then I want you to repeat that scan from the top of the head down through the body. I'll talk you through. This time I want you to have the lens, the focus on seeing if there's some pleasant sensation happening in any of those areas. So just beginning with the scalp, the face and the head, just roaming around, seeing if there's any parts that feel pleasant or at least not painful. Feeling through the neck and the throat, shoulders and arms, hands, going to the chest, the belly, and moving to the back, the whole back, upper back, mid back, lower back, right down to the tailbone. Hips, pelvis, buttocks, right down the whole length of the legs, all the way down to your feet. And again, just check in with your breathing. See if you need to sigh. And then I want you to see if it's possible for you now to keep the lips closed and just begin to breathe in and out through the nose. See how it feels. If it's not good for you, obviously return to what you were doing before, but if you could possibly sustain what we call nasal breathing, just do that for the rest of the meditation. And then I'd ask you to put your hand on your body, just somewhere that makes sense to you, somewhere on the trunk of the body. Put one hand or two, whatever feels right. And then I would invite you to begin to notice that your hand is most likely moving as you breathe. There's no right way for this experience to show up. And if after 2 or 3 breaths you can't feel any movement of the hand whatsoever, maybe try it somewhere else. Sometimes the belly or the upper chest can move a lot as we breathe. And I'm going to leave you just for 1 minute to stay with this experience of feeling your body breathe. And just remember, you're being kind and not judgmental. There's no right way. It's just being aware of your body moving as you breathe. So just for 1 minute. If your mind wanders, just start again. Okay, just check that you're comfortable. We're going to stay here for about another 5 minutes. So just move if you need to. So what we're going to begin doing now, still with the eyes closed if that's what you're doing, or soft gaze, we're going to begin to explore sensation in the body, because when you have an urge or a craving, there will be sensation. So if you actually are having an urge or a craving right now, go to where you feel it the most. So it might be your belly, it might be your throat. And if you're not quite sure, just visit a few places in the body. But if you're not having a craving right now and you're just practice, I invite you to go close your eyes and just be with your body for a moment. No judgment. And just find somewhere there's a fairly strong sensation. So by sensation, I mean things that can be pressure, can be heat, can be tingling, can be pulsing. If it's sensations in the head, it can be light or sound. Something that you can feel, something's going on. And when we take our mind there, you can take it in two ways. You can think of your mind as like a torchlight. So you can either be having this very broad beam of light, a very diffuse, wide beam of light coming out. That's your awareness, your mind. Or you can really narrow it down and have a really, really strong, very narrow beam of light. You can try both if you're not sure which one works for you. So all you're doing now is giving your mind the job of traveling to some part in your body that has a sensation. You can put your hand there as well if it's somewhere you can reach. And now you're being curious about the sensation. So some of the questions you can start to ask yourself are things like, does it feel tight or does it feel loose? Does it have a temperature? Does it have a color? Am I experiencing this as pleasant or unpleasant? Where's the edge of it? Like, does this sensation have a border? Can I find the edge, and is the edge very distinct and clear, or is it kind of this fuzzy, vague border? And then connect your breath with the sensation. Same sensation, and begin to notice, does it feel the same? Is it the same sensation when I breathe in as when I breathe out? Or does something happen? Does it change? Just spend 5 breath cycles. So that's breathing in and breathing out. Just 5, just observing the same sensation. And if your mind wanders off, which it might, you just bring it back again. Just 5 breaths. So just notice, was that what that was like for you? What information did you get? And how cooperative was your mind, or were you constantly interrupted by thoughts? Often with a craving, an urge, there can be very strong thoughts that are part of it. So this practice of urge surfing, part of it is gaining the discipline and control over your mind to stay simply with the sensation. And all that you need to do is, when you notice there's a thought, you just bring your mind back to feeling a sensation. So that is the simple process. So I will just get us to finish. Again, just check you're comfortable, wiggle if you need to, sigh if you need to. And just in your mind's eye, if you're someone who visualizes, or just feeling if you're more of a feeler, waves at the beach. It can be a gentle kind of beach scene, or it could be quite big and stormy. And just experiencing the cycle of waves, how they start, how they roll into the beach, they crash on the shore, and then they slide back out again. And you have this experience of the cyclical nature of waves. The same with your breath. It comes in, travels in and down, it turns and comes up and out. It's the same thing with urges. They don't last forever. They come in, they rise, they fall and fade away. Just take a couple more gentle, easy breaths here. And then slowly reorientating yourself back to the present. If your eyes are closed, preparing in the next couple of breaths to gently open them. You might want to keep your gaze down, or you might even want to hold your hand up over your eyes and open your eyes behind your hands. Just check if the body needs a release or some movement. So that practice, it's called a practice for a reason. The more we practice it, the better we get at it. So I would urge you to be kind and realistic in this journey of dealing with urges and cravings. Having done this once doesn't mean that from now on and you've got it nailed and you'll never give in to an urge or a craving ever again. What it does mean is that you have an opportunity to try something many, many times, and over time you will get better and better at it. And the thing is to not add to your suffering. You're already suffering with when we're trying to deal with drinking less. There's already suffering in our lives. So please don't add to your suffering by beating yourself up if an urge or a craving does end up overwhelming you. It might be that you start the practice and 3 or 4 breaths in, you actually just can't hold yourself there and you give in to the craving. What to do there, yoga would say, is to praise yourself for the attempt. And small steps, many, many small steps in the right direction over time will take you to your goal. That this is not a magic wand, and that none of us get this right the first time round, that we're slowly transforming our behavior. And the thing that has the most long-lasting effect is developing an attitude of kindness and compassion towards yourself as you try and master this. So I hope that's helpful for you. And equally, if you've enjoyed this session, please do take the time to watch the other session, which is a yoga practice, which you could start doing daily, or you might just want to do a one-off yoga practice. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this time with me. And it's been my pleasure to offer this to you.